Good evening. A warm welcome to everyone joining us this evening for our program of Holocaust Remembrance. I'm Larry Rosenberg, your host for tonight. Before we get started, I have two important housekeeping things to say. First, for everyone here in the room, everyone at home, please make sure that your phones are on silent or turned off. And the necessary statement for those of us that are here in the room: should the uneventual requirement come for a sudden exit, there are two doors that lead to the outside on that side of the building, and there's another exit here that leads to the other side directly outside. Hopefully we won't need them, but please be aware of the three exits. Over the years, this program has grown significantly to now being sponsored by 18 major organizations. In addition to Congregation Shara Shalom and the Jewish Community Relations Council of Long Island, all of these wonderful groups, represented by dedicated leadership, can be seen on the screen. Alan, could you put that up, please? Just great cooperation from these wonderful organizations throughout the preparation for this program. Now, in addition to the people that we're thanking that helped put this together, most significantly, there is a huge turnout tonight that we are most grateful for, both online and in the synagogue here. And that is a direct reflection of how important this remembrance is to each one of us. The program tonight will contain several traditional elements, but also one or two new elements for this year. Alan, could you please put up the agenda? We will start the program with the singing of the national anthem, and then the lighting of the 6 memorial candles. And then we will light a 7th candle in memory of the 5 million non-Jews killed during the time of the Shoah. And then we will hear from the testimony of a Holocaust survivor, Goldie Schwartz. Following her testimony, you will hear two moving songs, Ani Mamim and Al Shlosha Devarim, sung by the Nassau Lower Voices of the Metropolitan Youth Orchestra. At that point, we will be at the heart of our program, Marvin Kalb, recalling his conversations with Elie Wiesel. We will then close the program with the recitation of the Kaddish and Israel's national anthem, the Hatikva. The Holocaust, or Shoah in Hebrew, was enacted by an established government, Nazi Germany, with due process, with collaboration, and at times with a world of silence, and also with engineering design and financial backing, with one simple goal: to kill Jews, all Jews if possible. Tonight we will remember that awful time from several points of view. Before we sing the national anthem, I am pleased to introduce for the first time in our program the Nassau Lower Voices of the Metropolitan Youth Orchestra. They will offer 4 vocal selections tonight. The Nassau Lower Voices are 15 talented high school students, most of which are here tonight, from across the county, here tonight together with their musical director and pianist. Could you please stand in your places here in the building and at home as they lead us in the Star-Spangled Banner? Please be seated. Thank you so much We will hear from the Nassau Lower Voices again very, very soon. It is simply not humanly possible to grasp 6 million murders, but we could try. We try with one candle for each of the 1 million people murdered, killed for just being Jewish. Although these lives were taken and many others cruelly tormented, Jewish existence was not eliminated. Representing survival and Jewish continuity are our candlelighters tonight. Represented among them, a survivor, survivor's children, grandchildren, and extended family. Cantor Rosner will sing Esprent by Mordechai Gebertik, and as each candle is lit, let's each try to remember those that were lost. Cantor?
Esprent, Briter Esprent, Sken Cholile komm in dem Moment, wenn die Städte mit Zeit zusammen, soll weg mit Asch und Flammen.
The first candle is lit by survivor Martin Bloch, as we remember the 6 million martyrs who were killed by the Nazis and their helpers. The second candle is lit by Avi Sineski, representing his grandparents, Chaim and Sarah Indig, as we remembered that they murdered the young and the old, including more than 1 million children.
Und steht und guckt das Säuse mit verleihten.
The third candle is lit by Rachel Priest, representing her grandparents, Edmund and Lucy Brent, as we remember the scholars, the writers, the artists, and the 32,000 Jewish communities that are no more.
Und steht und guckt das Säuse wie unser Städte brennt.
The fourth candle is lit by Elliot Zellinger, representing his grandparents, Ella and Sam Zellinger, as we remember the sinful indifference of a cold world whose heart could find no compassion to open their gates to the persecuted.
Boy, 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 es brennt. Briter Esprent, das ist nur ein Eichlein gewähnt. Wenn die Städte seid Eier, nehmt die Kehlem, löscht das Feuer, löscht mit eierem Blut.
The fifth candle is lit by Roberta and Jay Post, Eric Post, and Harrison Post, representing their uncle, Harry Williams. As we remember the courageous men and women who kept the flame of Jewish culture and faith burning in the ghettos and the concentration camps. Please note, this is a second, third, and fourth generation.
Steht die Brite, hat das Säuse mit verleihten Hand.
The sixth candle is lit by Bernice Slutzman, honoring parents Roma and fellow Weingarten, grandparents Eliezer and Brindle Workowitz and Baruch Yosef and Pessel Freemet Weingarten, as we remember the heroes and fighters of the ghettos, the forests and the camps who fought back defiant and proud.
Wie unsere Städte brennen.
And now we will light a seventh candle as we remember the 5 million non-Jews who were killed by the Nazis. Lighting this candle is Mindy Perlmutter, the executive director of the JCRC, the Jewish Communal Relations Council of Long Island, who represents all of Long Island from a communal point of view.
Es brennt, Brüder, es brennt. Es kein Politikum in der Moment. Wenn die Städte mit euch zusammen, soll mit Asch und Flammen bleiben soll Puste Schliot, schwarze Puste Fendt. Und ich denk und guck das Säuse mit verlegter Hand. Und ich steht und guck das Säuse wie unser Stadt.
Thank you so much, Cantor Rosner, and a very special thank you to the candlelighters, and a very important mention to our partnering organization, 3G New York, representing survivor grandchildren in the metropolitan area, who helped us so much with this candlelighting program. Sometimes we can relate to the reality of the Holocaust best by hearing and seeing the experiences of one single person. Tonight, that person is Goldie Schwartz, a Holocaust survivor. Sadly, Goldie passed away a few years ago. Her testimony we're about to hear was recorded by Shira Stoll, then with the Staten Island Advance. Her daughter and son-in-law have zoomed in with us, and we are honored to have them here tonight. Alan, please roll the video.
You wrote it down?
I wrote it down because, look, I'm not young and I forget, okay? I tell you the truth. After Pesach, they started collecting all the Jewish people, and they took us to Munkach, and we all lived there for a little while. And from Munkach we went to Auschwitz. When I arrived to Auschwitz, we were all standing together. My mother had 8 children, 2 boys and 6 girls. Mengele was his name, a German officer. They called him Dr. Mengele. And he told for my 2 sisters to go right, and for my mother and father, they should go right. And he took my younger sister also to go right. And for me and for my 2 older sisters, he took I should go left. And I never saw my mother and my sisters, never again. They told us that they went to the crematorium right away. They cut our hair and they took all our clothes off. When we all came out, we didn't recognize each other. I cried, I want my mother, I want my mother. I was not even 14. went to sleep in bunkers, 6 people together. It was a few tears. Next morning, we were all standing and they took me out from that line and they took my 2 sisters out and they gave them numbers. They didn't put me with them anymore. And they took me on a train. But my sisters thought that they put me in the crematorium, but I really went to a different camp, Stutthof. At night, they used to make selection. They had a crematorium there also. And I got very close there after with a lady, and she used to take care of me because she lost 3 or 4 children, her own, from Poland. So she wanted to save me, she loved me, she liked me. And every time the bosses used to come at night to make selections to take away people, she used to hide me, so I stayed with her. We were full of lies. We didn't bathe, we didn't change clothes, we didn't do nothing. Many times I had nothing to eat the whole day, but I wanted to live. And then in April, we had to start to go away from that camp. And we hardly had any clothes, we just had one like a little dress and something. And we had to walk, and if you couldn't walk, they shot you. They left you, they just left you. Until we got to another camp. I was there maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and we were liberated by the Russians. It was very, very happy. But the Russians were not nice to us, to the refugees. They only wanted sex. So it was terrible. And I was only 15, so it was nice. When I came home from the concentration camp, that's what I looked like. That's me. They didn't know what to do for us, that we survived. From my time, not many survived. So one Saturday, there is a dance for all the refugees. I was 20. That was 1950. And I see somebody going back and forth, back and forth. This person came over to me and he says, "Is your name Goldie?" I said, "Yes." He said, "So how do you know?" So in Germany, I met a cousin of yours, and she told me everything about you. And he took me home and he said to me, "So when do you want to go out?" So I said, "Okay, tomorrow 12 o'clock. 10 o'clock, the bell rings, and here he is. I wasn't dressed. I said to him, "Why did you come so early?" Look, I couldn't wait anymore. and he never left me. We got married July 15th. I have a daughter and a son. Susan is 64, she told me, and Stevie is 58. A 5-year difference.
How many grandchildren?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't count grandchildren. Now they have their own children. I'm already great-grandmother. All my grandchildren call me every Friday. Friday I'm very busy. And that's my life story.
Thank you, Goldie. So moving. And our thanks to our many friends in Staten Island that have made this testimony possible. This is the third year that we have included a Staten Island interview in this program. Again, our thanks go to Shira Stoll, the Staten Island Advance, their editorial board. We are incredibly grateful for the work that they have done. We will now bring back the Nassau Lower Voices with their musical director, James Ludwig, and pianist, Saran Kim. They will sing us the traditional Ani Mamim, or in English, I Believe. And then they will sing Al Shlosha Devarim, on 3 things the world stands: on Torah, the law, on prayer, and on loving kindness. The Nassau Lower Voices. I think it's a good idea to give them a round of applause. Alan, would you be kind enough to put up the slide? I want everyone to see the names of these very talented young people. This is the Nassau Lower Voices of the Metropolitan Youth Orchestra. They are absolutely terrific. We are so grateful that they came here to join us tonight. They're with their musical director, their pianist, as well as the Metropolitan Youth Orchestra executive director, Anthea Jackson, is here with us tonight as well. Absolutely wonderful inclusion in this program tonight. Thank you very, very much. Your singing has moved us, but even more so, your presence here tonight is so meaningful. And we will hear from them still one more time in a bit at the end of the program. And now we come to the heart of our program, our keynote speaker, Marvin Kalb. Over the years, Marvin has developed a deep connection with Elie Wiesel, both personally and through his interviews. Let's take a short look at that connection with excerpts from two interviews that Marvin had with Elie Wiesel. One was in November of 2006 at a session of the Kalb Report, which was held at the National Press Club. The second, which was more recently, in May of 2014 at the 92nd Street Y in Manhattan, where many of us have been. So let's take a look at these two interviews with excerpts. Alan, could you please show us the video montage?
Elie Wiesel is a survivor of the Nazi death camps at Auschwitz and Buchenwald. His mother, his father, one of his three sisters, all perished, along with 6 million other Jews during the Holocaust. After the war, Wiesel studied in Paris, became a journalist, and wrote a book called Night about his experiences in the death camps. It was published in the U.S. in 1960. But if you looked at the New York Times paperback bestseller list only yesterday, you'd see that it's listed, with a little help from Oprah, as number 4, and been there now for more than 40 weeks. Wiesel has written 46 other books. He's a professor at Boston University, where he has taught philosophy and religion since 1976. He's the winner of many, many prizes, most notably the Nobel Peace Prize in 1986. And he lives by the simple credo that silence in the face of injustice, indifference, is unacceptable. When he received the Nobel Peace Prize, he said, "I swore never to be silent whenever, wherever human beings endure suffering and humiliation. We must take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim." Professor Wiesel, welcome. We are honored by your presence.
Thank you. I belong to a generation that learned to take the enemy's threats seriously. I take the enemy's threats more seriously than the friend's promises.
Mm-hmm. After what you have been through in the Holocaust, even post-Holocaust, but certainly then, what your family went through, how can you believe in God?
You can continue. How come that I believe in the humanity of man? How come that I believe in the fact that the other is not an enemy? How come? When in those times, look, in those times, again, I belong to a generation, to a people that were abandoned by God and betrayed by man. So how come that I believe still enough to go on working and teaching and writing and hoping that thanks to our tales, to our stories, to our witness, the world will be a better world? How come?
Elie, you have said, the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. The opposite of art is not ugliness, it's indifference. The opposite of faith is not heresy, it's indifference. And the opposite of life is not death, it's indifference. You have refused to be indifferent to the criminality in Darfur, the brutal regime in North Korea. You've tried to help the Bosnian Muslims. The question in my mind is the evil in the world, represented by what I've just said, is the evil in the world so great and so pervasive that you may on occasion feel that you're baying at the moon, and that no matter how many times you say this is wrong, human rights are being violated, that the practice would continue, sadly?
I would continue anyway.
You do it anyway?
I would do it anyway, simply because if not, you quoted myself, I would say that neutrality, my neutrality would be make me into an accomplice, and I don't want to be an accomplice. I would do it anyway.
And is America untouchable? What's your feeling about this?
It's so different, really. Come.
It's hard. I'm sorry to.
No. But of course we go into depth all that. Can it happen again? Sometimes I have written about that period. I try to work with regard to the lessons that we have to learn from there in order to prevent future and so forth. Do I think that I do it because I think it could happen again, meaning a Holocaust again? No. I believe ideologically, that it is a unique experience, a unique event with a capital E, just like the giving of the law at Sinai. It's unique. And therefore the unicity will save us from that. That cannot happen again. Other things happen. Have already happened, can happen. Mass murder, absolutely, we have seen it. Anti-Semitism, violent anti-Semitism, we have seen it. But what we know what Holocaust meant really, and I'm embarrassed because I think I'm the one who was, if not the first, surely among the first, to introduce that term into our consciousness about the Holocaust. Does it mean that it can happen again? It cannot happen again. Massacres, we have seen them. Injustice, yes. Racism, yes. We haven't learned. Mankind has not learned much, unfortunately. We are trying to teach, but hasn't learned. We failed, has learned. But to say that once again, there could be a situation in America, surely, where the Senate and the House would adopt a policy, a law, to kill the Jewish people. Come on, really. Now, would a German Jew, let's say in the 1920s, have said the same thing? Probably some of them did. But nevertheless, I am ready to define my faith in America and saying it cannot happen here.
A question from Norfolk, Virginia. A lot of us take some of the smallest pleasures for granted. When you finally had freedom after the Holocaust, what was the first thing that you did which you weren't able to do for so many years?
Have a good meal.
To completely describe Marvin Kalb's accomplishments and his impact would be a reflection of our world condition for literally decades. And it would take longer than this entire program. So we're not going to do that. But I just want to share a couple of highlights. He was a reporter for CBS and NBC News starting in 1957 with an assignment of one of the Morrow boys, that's his Edward R. Morrow. He was a chief diplomatic correspondent for Meet the Press. He has unbelievably authored 17 books, and he is profoundly a champion of something called non-political press. He's the founding director of the Shorenstein Center and professor emeritus at Harvard's Kennedy School. Now listen to this. He's the host of the Kalb Report starting in 1994, and with permission, he was 64 at that time, and to the last report, which was in January of this year, 103 reports in total. He has covered or interviewed literally who's who of the world. Just a sampling. Every US president for recent decades. Justices Scalia, and on the other hand, Ginsburg, Nikita Khrushchev, Madeleine Albright, Hillary Clinton, Walter Cronkite, Ted Koppel, and many, many, many more. But of the vast number of interviews and friendships in Marvin's portfolio is his connection with Elie Wiesel. Tonight, we are going to hear firsthand from Marvin of his conversations with Elie Wiesel. This is sort of a channel from Elie to all of us. And if he will, perhaps Marvin will add a little bit of his own color to those conversations. Now, much of Marvin Kalb's reporting, and I might say his education of us, has been in his role as an interviewer. So, with his permission, we're going to turn the tables on him, and I am going to interview Marvin Kalb. Marvin, thank you. Welcome to our Holocaust program. Good to see you.
Thank you, Larry. It's great to be here. Great pleasure indeed.
Okay, you're not hearing me?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Larry, I was just going to say, following up on your very kind introduction, I am privileged to have been selected by you and the other folks to be the one to try to bring Elie back to us in real terms. He is, in my judgment, one of the great people of the 20th century, without any doubt. And so please fire away with whatever question you have, and I'll do my best in answering.
Absolutely. What an honor for me. So this is my first question to you. This is a program about Elie Wiesel and his teachings, obviously. You had 2 major interviews with him. What single Holocaust reflection from him is the most memorable to you?
Well, to speak about the most memorable reflection of Elie is impossible because he had so many, and he was so rich with ideas. And in some of what we have already seen tonight, there is one aspect that he kept going back to over and over again, really no matter what question I asked him. And that was this idea of the uniqueness of the Holocaust. The way somehow or another history worked it out that Germany was just in that condition in the 20s and 30s to produce a Hitler and to listen to Hitler. And that, Elie believed, was unique. He was perfectly aware that there were horrendous killings in the past and probably would be in the future. But for him, there was this uniqueness of so many things that seemed to come together. And he was always great at asking questions. So he would say, why is it that a country like Germany, in the heart of Europe, a country that produced some of Europe's great philosophers, music, literature, but produce a government program, not just an idea, but a government program to exterminate a people? There were not answers that normally came with that kind of question, but how could there be?
Marvin, I'd like to ask a follow-up question. We know Elie Wiesel was an observant Jew. And for the things that he went through, do you believe he still maintained his belief in God?
Absolutely, absolutely. The most stunning thing about him was that no matter what question you threw at him, and by the way, he was very good at throwing questions at you, but no matter what question I would throw at him, there was always his ending up with an assertion of faith. His belief in God was total. His belief that somehow in his studies, there would be an answer to a question that he would raise. And he would try to explain his own history. This town in Romania that he was from, the fact that he was in a yeshiva, the fact that he was constantly studying Judaism. He was constantly reading the Bible, trying to understand it. He was asking questions of it, and it was throwing questions back at him. And there was a constant interaction between him and his faith. And for him, that was central, no matter how difficult the issue.
Let's take a look at this from a little bit different perspective. In your interviews, over and over again, you focused on the topic of freedom, or the lack thereof on occasions.
Yes.
How has Elie Wiesel impacted your thoughts on freedom from before you met him to the present?
In a very huge way. And it may be impossible for me to actually express the depth of my appreciation to him. I tried while he was alive, and I will try now as well. Elie and I talked a great deal about the first commandment. I am the Lord thy God who brought thee forth out of Egypt, out of the house of bondage, and thou shalt have no other God but me. There in that final comment is the major Jewish contribution to world philosophy, and that is monotheism, that there is one God who has an answer for you, and you turn to one God, not many. And when he got you out of Egypt, out of bondage, he put you on the road toward freedom. He didn't produce it. He put you on a road towards it. But there was a lot that you still had to do to achieve it. But nevertheless, once sprung from bondage, you were on a road to freedom. And one of the issues that we carried even further on this point is the relationship of the first commandment to the first amendment in the US Constitution. And Elie would always point out that the people who wrote that Constitution were men of the Bible. They were politicians in those days who actually read books, and they read the Bible and they understood it. And for them, there was a connection between the Almighty, between bondage, between a road to freedom, and therefore the First Amendment to the US Constitution dealt with freedom for the American people. And so there was, I think, in both our minds, but I don't want to overstate what I think was in Elie's, but I'm pretty sure it was, because we talked about it. And that was the link between the First Commandment and the First Amendment, and it all had to do with freedom, that the individual could be connected to God without any intercession. That was the great thing about Judaism, and it remains so. The Jew does not require a church or a mosque. It's great to have a synagogue, but it is not required. The individual, with his freedom to talk to the Almighty, can do it on his own. And that, to me, was a central issue and a foundational belief that I have held, and I think it was a mirror image of what Elie held as well.
Let's take a look at the primary role post-war that Elie Wiesel took, if I may, as a teacher. And do you believe that he has been successful in increasing the world's awareness of the Holocaust? Has he succeeded in his mission?
Absolutely, phenomenally so. You use the word teacher. I was privileged many, many times to sit in on his classes at Boston University when he taught religion and taught the Bible. And he was a great teacher. He knew how to communicate with people, and they loved listening to him. There was never an empty seat in his classroom. It was always filled up. And yes, there were many people who did great movies about the Holocaust, documentaries about the Holocaust, hundreds of books about the Holocaust. But the person, in my judgment, who brought the power of the Holocaust to the world was Elie Wiesel, without any doubt. There is a magnificent Holocaust museum about a mile or two from where I am right now. And if you went into the heart of Berlin, there's a Holocaust museum right there at the Brandenburg Gate. If you go to cities all over the world, there are Holocaust museums, Jewish museums. The thought of the Holocaust is alive because, in my judgment, Elie Wiesel brought it to life at the beginning and kept it alive, and his power and influence was so significant that it continues to this day. Will it always continue? God knows, as Elie would say, but I think it will because of the power of his words, his thoughts, his books, his speeches, his interviews. They're all so memorable.
So at the risk of asking you a leading question, do you think, in your opinion, that he felt, and do you feel, that this work of creating an awareness of the Holocaust is complete? Are we done?
Not at all. No, not at all. And Elie certainly understood that. I think that anyone who picks up a copy of any daily newspaper knows that. We're an unfinished product. We are not great. We're not horrible. We're in a process that may, if you want to be an optimist, that may in fact produce a finer human being. But I think Elie was he had enough of the journalist skepticism in him to believe that perfection is around the corner. It isn't. I certainly don't believe it. And I think in Elie's case, there was always, because he was so religious and driven by religion, he wanted to believe that the process of perfection, of improvement, must continue and will continue. You asked for my own personal belief. I'm not so sure. I probably felt what Elie felt up until recent years, but America in the last 5 or 6 years has changed profoundly. Take a look at some of the polling data about anti-Semitism in this country. It is zooming up. Why? Why is that the case? I'm not pulling an Elie Wiesel on you. I'm asking a legitimate question. Why is that the case? And I believe that American politics has been poisoned in the last 3 or 4 years. I don't want to point to an individual, but his name is Donald Trump. I'm sorry to say so. He's a former American president, and I have and always have had the highest regard for American presidents. But he has done bad things to this country, and things that you can now measure in statistical terms. Take a look at what anti-Semitism was. It was always there, but look where it was in 2015, and look where it is today. Stunningly different, and it's spreading all over the world. And we have to be mindful of that, alert, and try to stop it to the best we can.
Marvin, that's a perfect lead-in to my next question. And in the clip that we saw, Elie mentioned that many Jews in Germany prior to the Nazi emergence would have said it, and that's it with a capital I, meaning the Holocaust could never happen here in the United States, meaning in Germany and now in the United States. From your point of view, can we be confident that the Holocaust will never happen here? Or are we just being naive? Where are we on this?
Maybe a bit too idealistic, Larry. I can tell you the following 2 stories very quickly. When Elie and I talked about the possibility of a return to violent anti-Semitism in this country and the rise of a Hitler-like phenomenon, Elie was so marvelously, idealistically pro-American, he could not believe it. As he said in one of the interviews, he could not imagine the House of Representatives passing a law to exterminate the Jewish people. And frankly, I can't imagine it myself. However, point number 2, I would often talk to Elie about this. Another dear friend of mine, Ted Koppel, and I would have long discussions on this very subject, because Ted came from a German Jewish family. He himself was born in England, and he brought with him to this country a European feel for politics. My feel was very American from day one. And so I always felt, no, it can never happen in America. And Ted would say, yes, it can. And then I would take that argument to Elie and say, what do you think? And he would very much side with me. However, I think toward the end, that faith in America was ebbing a bit. And in my case, it has ebbed considerably. And I now believe it is unlikely, but it is now, for the first time, possible. Because otherwise, there was an article in today's Forwards, for example, by a man who was recalling what his grandmother said to him when she was a young girl, like Goldie Schwartz, a young girl in Germany, and picked up in a death camp and managed somehow to survive. And he looks at the paper today, this grandson, and he says, "What's going on here? I am beginning to be afraid. Synagogues have to be protected. You have to have police around synagogues." So is this inexorable? No, no. This country still has deep roots of goodness and liberty. And we have to depend on two factors. One, a continuing vital judicial system, and a vital, unafraid press corps. And if you have both of those, we're going to hold off any onslaught of fascism. If either of those weakens, we're in trouble.
Marvin, I think it's safe to say, certainly for me and everyone else that's hearing this, that your relationship with Elie Wiesel was not average, even for you, not average.
Not at all. No, it was a great honor to be with him almost all the time.
So sometimes when you have that type of relationship, the question comes up, when did you meet him first?
You know, the funny thing is I met Elie before I met him. And by that, I mean, I read his book, Night. And that had a transformative effect on my life. I can't tell you exactly when I met him. It was decades ago. And there was that time in the 1990s when I spent a great deal of time in his classroom. And we would have dinner in the evening. And when I was in New York, we would meet and have dinner at that Italian restaurant very close to where he lived. And Elie Wiesel had a profound effect upon me in one way that I'd like to share. I used to think of the Bible as sort of a book of instruction, a book that gave me my marching orders on how to be a good Jew. What Elie taught me was that the Bible is a great storybook. Think of it as a set of stories. Some stories were about war, but most of them were about people and how people got on with one another. And the humanity that exists and could still be exploited. This was so central about Elie and his appreciation of the Bible, that he passed it on to me. And I have to tell you, I am deeply, deeply grateful to him every single day.
So Elie Wiesel said often that his role was to ask questions, not to give answers. If he were alive today, what question would you ask of him?
Well, it was always the same question, Larry. It was always the same question. Quite often, as a matter of fact, we would begin our dinners with my question. Elie, how is it possible for there to be a God and for there to be a Holocaust? Can you explain to me why God would allow a Holocaust to take place? How was that possible? And Elie, you know, was great at asking questions, and quite often, if you read and listen to him very carefully, when he does not want to come to a specific conclusion, he'll take the issue and raise a question about it. And so if I raised the question with him about God and the Holocaust, he would always answer that his faith was large enough, substantive enough, real enough to him that it could absorb horrors like the Holocaust without completely damaging the roots of that faith. The roots in Elie's Judaism remained firm, even though they were buffeted by questions that he could not answer. But nobody could answer that question. Nobody. It just sets off a whole range of other questions.
So Marvin, I'm getting brave enough to ask you a personal question.
Okay.
Did Elie Wiesel ever make you shed a tear, or did he ever make you laugh?
Oh, wait a minute. Elie Wiesel made me cry constantly. He may, in fact, now. Oh, no. We would talk quite often about his family in Europe during the Holocaust and mine. My father's mother and father and his brothers and sisters were all wiped out, except for one kid named Velvel, who spent all of World War II in the forests of Poland fighting the Nazis, managed in 1945 to get to Palestine. He joined the Palmach on the first night that they put a rifle in his hand and sent him out on patrol. He was killed. He spent 5 years fighting the Nazis. On the first night, he was killed. So Elie and I would share these stories constantly, and I cried a lot, yes. But remember also that Elie had a great sense of humor, and he made me laugh a lot also. And, you know, some people have a great sense of humor because they can crack jokes. That was not Elie's humor. Elie could take a circumstance and just sort of ask a question, and it would break the tension and bring a big smile to your face. For example, I asked Elie in one of the interviews that you showed, I said, Elie, if God were a journalist and he was on the planet right now, and he wanted to ask a question of a major story, where would he turn? What would be the issue? And Elie put a smile on his face. He looked at me and he said, ask him. And I said to Elie, you have a closer tie to the Almighty than I. You ask him for me. He said, no, you ask him. And we could laugh. So Elie could make me cry and laugh at the same time, always.
Marvin, I have one last question, please. And I'm going to ask you to put on your hat as an educator, as a professor. From everything you've experienced and everything you've learned from Elie Wiesel, is there one lesson that you would, you know we have a very special group of young youth in our group today, young people. What lesson would you like to impart to the youth of today from your relationship with Elie Wiesel?
Why? W-H-Y. That small word, to me, is what I extract from decades of a relationship with, as I said early on, one of the great men of the 20th century. And by the way, that great man was supported by a great woman marrying his wife and his son Elisha. They helped him along with hundreds of other people who were his friends, and Elie could make friends like nobody I've ever known. But he was always asking the question, why? And my dear brother Bernie, who passed away just a couple of months ago at the tender age of 100, he would often begin meals in our home by saying, what's the lead today? And what he meant by lead was the lead sentence of a newspaper story. What was the most important thing that happened today? Why? And so I say to all young people, keep asking why. Don't accept everything that is told to you. Ask why.
Marvin, thank you so much. I'm going to ask for a nationwide round of applause for the opportunity to be with you tonight. I need to write down the name of the elected official, please. We will long remember these words. And actually, Marvin, I will long remember the days leading up to tonight for you and I, as will my wife. But certainly, this is such a great opportunity, a unique opportunity for us to get the wisdom of Elie Wiesel directly through you based on the experiences that you had with him. The word unique is trite, but in this case it applies. It could come through no other source. Thank you so very much. And again, Marvin Kalb. A program like this, and certainly this program, it's a long list of people to thank, and I'm going to do it as quickly as I can. There are 18 partnering organizations that worked hard bringing this thing together. I must mention Mindy Perlmutter, our partner, the JCC of Long Island, and her staff. It's been an incredible leadership role from their part. Our candlelighters, Martin Block, the survivor, the 2Gs, the 3Gs, the 4Gs that honored their parents, the young men of the Lower Nassau Voices, the family that came here today, the musical director, James Ludwig, the pianist, Saran Kim, and certainly the executive director of NYU, Anthea Jackson. We've got some technical people here that made this all possible, our support people, Alan Shamoon, Jackson Shamoon, Richie Selzer. This is not a simple task. We have an organizing committee. 20 people for the last few months have been doing this. I do want to recognize, and I want to get this correct, we have an elected official here with us, Mindy. John Dufresne, thanks so much for joining us. It is so important to have representatives of government hear this and support us. To Goldie Schwartz, Shira Stoll, the Staten Island Advance. They're just great people. But the core of our gratitude tonight and the core of our remembrance will be our appreciation to Marvin Kalb. This was a unique privilege that we had tonight to hear the life and wisdom of Elie Wiesel, not from a book, not from a photograph, but channeled firsthand from this most renowned teacher, a journalist and a citizen of the world, Marvin Kalb. It wouldn't hurt one more time. But now I want you to hear something really remarkable. The appreciation that goes to the people that came to listen to this program and to see this program tonight. We can estimate that there are over 700 people both here and online that have come to see this program. You have remembered today, and today you have taken a stand. So now we're coming to the point where we're going to close our program. Goldie Schwartz's son-in-law, Menachem Gottlieb, we saw Goldie's testimony earlier, he is here with us on Zoom, and if we can get this right, he is going to lead us in the traditional mourner's prayer, the Kaddish, as we rise in our places. And we're going to remember the 6 million Jews that were slaughtered, the non-Jewish citizens that were killed, and the military heroes that made the ultimate sacrifice. Alan, are you able to spotlight Menachem? We're working on it, and hopefully Menachem will be ready to lead us in the Kaddish. Menachem, could you unmute, please?
Yes. You hear me?
Yes, we can. Please start. Thank you.
יתגדל ויתקדש מרבה.
Amen.
אתה דיברה כאותה והמלך מלכותי, וחייכון ומכון וחיי לכל בית ישראל, בגלה בזמן קרי בימו אמן.
Rabo, המבורך ליאור עמי המים.
יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויקלל שמי דקדשה בריחו, לאלה מכל ברכתה ושירתה, תשבחתה ונחמתה, תאמירן בעלמה ואימו אמן. יש לומר רבה משמיה וחיים עלינו בכל ישראל ואימו אמן. עושה שלום במומיו, ויעשה שלום עלינו בכל ישראל ואימו אמן.
Thank you. Please be seated. Menachem, thank you so much, and also thank you for the opportunity connecting us with Goldie Schwartz. It's just so important for us to hear those words. It has become our tradition in this program to end the program with the Israeli national anthem, which is called the Hatikva. But the word hatikva is so appropriate to the thoughts that we should have as we leave this program, and that is the word, the hope. We need to have hope. So we're going to ask the Nassau Lower Voices to come up again. It's going to take a moment till they get into their positions, and we're going to hear them sing Hatikva, their fourth rendition for the evening. Thank you. Oh. Stand up for the Hatikva. Could everyone please rise? Thank you. Thank you. Please be seated, everyone. One last thank you for the Nassau Lower Voices. There's no doubt you are truly inspiring, your singing is inspiring, but you also give us great reason to be hopeful and confident that our future, that your future, as your generation continues to grow, will be incredibly positive. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. For those who wish to participate in the evening prayer tomorrow, please stay on. This concludes our formal program, but first I have a couple of comments to make. In a moment, you'll see a very short survey on your screen. Please complete that survey. It's very important to us. For those that are in the building, there's some refreshments outside so you can sit and talk. And most importantly, I encourage everyone, both here and at home, to reflect upon what we've heard and seen tonight and express our opinions and feelings about it. And please mark your calendars. May 5, 2024 is our next program. Our journey will continue. Have a good night.
But before you all leave, there is one thank you that could not be said until now, and that's a huge thank you to Larry Rosenberg for his dedication and commitment to Holocaust commemoration and education.